And good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersee Joe. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Is it almost fall in Pennsylvania?
It doesn't feel like it. It's in the 90s. It's gonna be even hotter tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. When's your first football game out there?
Uh, 2 week. This weekend we're at West Virginia, and then the following weekend we're at home.
You're at home. All right. You got any plans for the Labor Day weekend?
Maybe head to New Jersey.
Oh my goodness. Maybe I'll bump into you. You going to be anywhere in my neck of the woods?
Maybe.
Maybe. All right. You want to hear what we're going to try to talk about today? We got so much to talk about.
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, first of all, today's August 20th. The situation with
27.
I'm
It's
sorry,
27. It's 27.
27th. Yeah, thank you very much. 27th. Thank you very much for catching that typo. And it's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. And particularly today, I have a bunch of things I guarantee you've not heard on TV. And I think you should have heard them on TV. And we're going to be clip heavy. I think I've got 5 different clips. So I won't be doing a lot of talking today. However, our stupidest thing I've heard all week is we'll tell you about a question that was asked by former spokesperson for Senator John Kennedy, asking if inflation is down, why haven't grocery store prices come down as well? And when I explain why she asked this question, it's about as stupid a question as I've ever heard. In our Science Minute, we'll tell you what common food item the TSA classifies as a liquid and limits the amount you can have in your carry-on luggage to just 3.4 ounces. And here's our first clip. We all know who Jon Stewart is, right?
Yeah, the Daily
Talk show
Show.
host. Now, Jon Stewart is a flaming liberal, but he did a 60-second piece on the Democratic, the DNC convention, and he just tore them apart about the hypocrisy. We all know who Governor Tim Walz is, right? He's the current Democrat nominee for vice president.
Yep.
And we have a letter from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce that was sent him a couple years back saying, please stop saying we gave you an award because we didn't. And we'll read that letter. We all know who Milton Friedman is, right?
Mm-hmm.
The late Milton Friedman. He's a Nobel Award-winning economist. And you know who Phil Donahue was, right?
Yeah, he just recently passed away.
Right. And this is a great segment with Milton Friedman. With Phil Donahue asks Milton Friedman about greed. And Milton Friedman goes on to explain to Phil Donahue why greed is not a bad thing and benefits everyone. In yet another clip, we'll play an interview with tech legend, a guy you probably never heard of, David Friedberg, challenging Kamala Harris's claims about rampant price gouging. And then in another Milton Friedman clip, we'll have Milton Friedman. Remember, weren't even born yet, probably, but at one point, Richard Nixon in this country implemented price controls that failed. The United Kingdom tried them, and Milton Friedman explains why price controls always fail. And finally, our taxpayer relief shot comes to us from Houston, where a family's 20-year-old son saves his father and 2 sisters from an attack by 3 armed thugs by his quick actions. So it was a 3-on-1, and the son saves the family. All right. I didn't tell you who our quote of the week was. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. You've heard of him, right?
I don't believe that I have.
Well, he was one of the most famous. He was right up there with Nero and Caesar, one of the famous. But here's why he says you should, regardless of your belief in God or not, why you should always live a virtuous life. And here's this quote, and this is obviously translated from Latin, but he said, if there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. Now, if there are gods, but they are unjust, then you should not worship them. Finally, if there are no gods, then when you die, you will be gone, but you will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. What do you think of that for logic?
Yeah.
All right. Again, if there are just gods, they will judge you based on how you lived your life.
Mm-hmm.
If the gods are unjust, then you shouldn't be worshiping them. And if there are no gods, what better way to live your life than to be cherished in the memories of your loved ones after you're gone?
Mm-hmm.
I think the logic is just superb. So that's why you should try to live a virtuous life, regardless of your belief in God or disbelief in God. So I just thought there was some just simple purity to that, his logic. All right. Stupidest thing I've heard all week. Now, John Kerry had a former his former. We all know who Senator John Kerry is, presidential candidate. He was Secretary of State under Barack Obama. Anyway, his spokesperson was named of Marie Harf, and she got hired by Fox News to kind of be like the liberal, input. Like, they always try to do fair and balanced. So she's been like the Democrat liberal uh, contributor on Fox News, which is even though people say it's a conservative channel. But she was on the other day, and here's the question she asked of the panel. And this was the question which just blew me away in its stupidity. She asked this question: if inflation has come down, but as it has been coming down, grocery prices haven't come down at the same rate. She asked that question with a straight face. Now, is she really that stupid, or does she think we are? Why would the slowing in the rate of increase result in the decrease in the price of anything?
It
Can
doesn't.
you figure that out?
It doesn't.
No. So just because the prices aren't increasing as fast as they were is not the same as them decreasing. So my question is she that stupid that she didn't understand what she was asking, or did she know exactly what she was asking? And does she think we're that stupid?
I don't think that prices they just slow at the rate at which they increase. They never really decrease.
No. Well, occasionally in a recession, if you get a recession, you'll occasionally get some decline, but we're not in a recession, in which case you would have deflation, not inflation. So I'm just shaking my head. Is this woman really that stupid, or does she think we're that stupid? Anyway, either way, it's the stupidest thing I heard all week. So Marie Harf. And she said that on 8/20/24, by the way. All right. So do you know what food product that the TSA classifies as a liquid that you can, therefore is limited to 3.4 ounces in your carry-on luggage?
Anything that's solid's allowed, anything that's liquid is not. So I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be some sort of in between, like a jelly or a gummy or something like that. That's kind of
How about peanut butter?
I'd say peanut butter is a solid, because if you hold it upside down, it doesn't move.
Well, TSA says peanut butter is a liquid and you're limited to 3.4 ounces. So here's my question.
Peanut butter is not a liquid, it's a solid.
Not according to TSA. So this is our runner-up to the stupidest thing I've heard all week. TSA says peanut butter is a liquid, and therefore you can only have 3.4 ounces. My question is this: if I have these peanut butter crackers, you can buy like 3 or 4 to the little sleeve.
Yeah.
And if you're traveling with a bunch of kids, so what if you had like a dozen of these peanut butter crackers, or a box full? You actually buy a box full. Would they make you weigh the peanut butter between the crackers and say you're over the 3.4 ounce limit?
But it's a solid.
You think it's a solid? I think it's a solid.
No, I don't think. If you screw the lid off a jar of peanut butter and hold that upside down, that peanut butter ain't coming out.
Well, then I think you need to write a strong letter to the TSA and explain to them why it's wrong. Because right now, if you take a small jar of peanut butter with you in your carry-on and some crackers, because you don't get a meal on airplanes anymore.
Yeah.
So if you try to buy about peanut butter and some crackers on the plane, they're going to make you throw your jar of peanut butter in the trash.
Yeah, my theory is that if you hold anything upside down, and if it doesn't come out, it's a solid.
Well, not according to the U.S. government. It's a liquid, and you can't have more than 3.4 ounces. By the way, here's the crazy thing. You could actually take, you could put some in a square Tupperware, freeze it solid with some dry ice, or put it in your freezer, and then take it out of the Tupperware, wrap it in saran wrap, and then take it to the airport in a cooler with some dry ice in it. And then just before you get there, take it out, take this solid brick of peanut butter and put it in your carry-on luggage and put it through the X-ray machine. And again, it would still be frozen solid. I wonder what they'd say then.
I'll tell you what they'll say. They're going to stop you because, and I know this from personal experience, I have flown with fudge in my bag, in my carry-on bag, and I got stopped by TSA because I had fudge in my bag.
And your logic why you couldn't have fudge?
Well, they eventually let me have it.
All right.
But they thought it was like a brick of C4 or something.
Okay. So if I had a brick of peanut butter, what do you think would happen?
I think the same thing with my fudge. They're going to think it's like a brick of C4.
All right. All right, I got so much. I'd love to spend more time, but we got so much to talk about. You ready to hear Jon Stewart talk about the DNC? It's only 60 seconds, but he starts
Yeah,
off
what did
with,
Jon Stewart say about the
and he
DNC?
starts off with Bernie Sanders. First thing you'll hear is Bernie Sanders. Then he's going to comment on what Bernie has to say. Here we go.
They had a guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire.
And he shows a picture of the governor, J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, who is heir to the Hyatt Hotel fortune. So Bernie Sanders is up saying, screw the billionaires. And the very next speaker following Bernie is the billionaire, the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker. So let me back that up one more time.
Guy yelling, "Screw the billionaires," followed immediately by a very happy billionaire. It's all okay if it's our billionaire. I don't like billionaires, but he's all right. They had guys making fun of people for going to Yale, and a bunch of people who went to Yale. The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators
And then he shows a clip of Bill Clinton, who was a sexual predator.
And so the irony in this is that Jon Stewart himself is a millionaire.
Yes, but wait, there's more, by the way. We got another 20 seconds. So yeah, they talk about prosecuting sexual predators. And Bill Clinton, it wasn't just Monica Lewinsky, it was Paula Jones and Jennifer Flowers. I mean, he had all these women he paid money to. So let's continue on.
people who went to Yale. The Democrats had people who prosecuted sexual predators and
Bill Clinton.
Did we lose that clip?
there goes that booking.
Anyway, hopefully, producer Susan, you can put this clip in the on the website so people can watch it, because a lot of it you have to see because he just does cutaways. He doesn't, but when he does the cutaway to the pictures of what's happening, it's hilarious. So that was Jon Stewart,
Who himself is a millionaire.
who himself is a millionaire. Well, he's not a billionaire, but
No, but he's a millionaire. He's
a
certainly
millionaire. Okay.
a millionaire.
All right. So Tim Walz, he's already been caught with a bunch of lies. Anyway, here's a letter from, this is back when he was running for Congress, and this is from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. I have the letter. You can put this up, and it's addressed to him by the president of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. And says, "Dear Mr. Walz, it has come to our attention that as part of your campaign for Congress, you have posted on your biography on your website that claims you received an award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce for your service to the business community. I have been the president of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce since the year 2000 and a professional staff person of the chamber for over 20 years. We researched this matter and can confirm that you have not been the recipient of any award from the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce. I'm not going to draw a conclusion about your intentions by including that line in your biography. However, we respectfully request that you remove any reference to our organization, as it could be considered an endorsement of your candidacy. It should be pointed out, however, that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has endorsed your opponent, Congressman Gil Gutcheck, for his support of small business issues. Sincerely, Barry Kennedy, President, Nebraska Chamber of Commerce." So, I guess if you're in politics, you lie, right?
Yep.
Was that another? We talked a couple of weeks ago about his alleged slip of the tongue, where he had that challenge medal printed with the actually minted with the wrong insignia on it, the sergeant major. Did we talk about that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So he said, "Oh, calling myself a sergeant was just a slip of the tongue." Well, it wasn't a slip of the tongue when you paid hundreds of dollars to have a challenge coin minted that included a picture of the insignia, the stripes of a sergeant major. That was not a slip of the tongue. All right. So let's go to Milton. I know I'm rushing this, but we got so much. Let's go to Milton Friedman. Now, I believe, by the way, when Phil Donahue was very, very liberal, thought he was going to ambush Milton Friedman, and Milton Friedman, very professionally and with some humor, basically dismantles Donahue's attack on what he called greed. So here we go.
And when you sit in your study and throughout your career as a professor, you've met students and you've probably dealt with every kind of question, stupid through. I guess I want to know whether you've ever been tempted to become politically revolutionary. Here's my question. When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that. Let alone myself.
One of the nice things about having your own show is when you're able to say at any time, we'll be back in just a moment.
He walked into a brick wall and said, we're going to go to a commercial. So what did you think of Friedman's explanation of why greed is good?
Interesting.
Well, this goes back to, where wealth inequality, we talked about this, I think, last week, where wealth inequality is actually benefits everybody, including those who are not wealthy. Again, if you're poor and on Medicaid and you need an MRI, you get it. You need an artificial hip, you get it. You need you need air conditioning, your apartment will have air conditioning. So that was Milton Friedman. I love the guy. We have another clip of him later on we're going to talk about. But that was Milton Friedman. I think he's I think his well-deserved his Nobel Award. So let's go now to tech legend David Friedberg. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's a multimillionaire. And we talked about, and we played Kamala Harris's clip where she called it price gauging. And and we won't be able to play the whole thing because it's 7 minutes long. But this is tech legend David Friedberg talking about Kamala Harris and her price gouging plans. Here we go.
Friedberg, what's your take on this reported by the Washington Post and I think confirmed by Politico move by Kamala Harris?
Thank you for asking.
Price fix.
Thank you for
Do you have
asking.
any feelings on it? Yes. Yeah.
I unequivocally hate socialism. Socialism destroys innovation, destroys productivity, and destroys individual liberties. Agriculture and food markets have insanely competitive dynamics because there are commodity markets, there are tons of competitors. There is no monopoly in making food, there is no monopoly in making CPG products, there is no monopoly in retail, there is no monopoly in grocery stores. It is a small margin, highly competitive, highly fragmented, free market. And the free market works in that everyone is always competing with each other, creating new productivity improvements, and as a result, over time, prices come down, except when the government intervenes and gets involved. So I would argue that the real cause of price inflation in food is not the supposed price gouging by corporate players in the ag and food industry, all of whom are deeply competitive with one another, but rather is the result of the inflation associated with government spending and stimulus coming out of COVID. Nick, Exhibit 1. The Fed balance sheet. From COVID to today, the Fed balance sheet grew from 4.2 trillion to 7.2 trillion dollars, a growth of 70%. The Federal Reserve went out and they bought assets and they issued debt to banks and introduced liquidity into the system. If you go to the next slide, as a result, the M2 money supply increased from 15 trillion to 21 trillion since COVID, a 40% increase. Okay, so now there is more money in the system, so the cost of everything should go up, which is exactly what we've seen. We can walk through a couple of the other commodity price charts from the St. Louis Fed. Here is the price of electricity. As an example, the price of electricity has gone up a little bit less than the M2 money supply. But the truth is, when you start to actually look at ag commodity prices over time, what's happened is there was certainly a boost coming from COVID, but the competition and the challenges in overproduction in the ag markets has started to hit and started to bring prices back down. So here's the price of strawberries. Strawberries today are selling for less than they were pre-COVID. Potatoes are now back to where they were pre-COVID. Now, let me give you some statistics on some of the supposed price gouging companies in the industry. Kraft Heinz stock pre-COVID was 29 bucks a share. Today, Kraft Heinz stock is 34 bucks a share. 2019 revenue of 25 billion, 2023 revenue of 26 billion. EBITDA on 2019 of 6.1 billion, EBITDA on 2023 of 6.3 billion. There's not a lot of profit gouging. In fact, Kraft Heinz has not been able to keep up with the inflation. Starbucks, which we just...
All right, and I won't go on, but he's got a dozen different examples of companies that are not making any more or making even less money than they were pre-COVID.
But I think he said it best in just the first 30 seconds when he went on about why he doesn't like socialism.
Yeah, it destroys innovation. Again, this is why, we've talked why 99 out of the 100 most important inventions of the 20th century came out of capitalist economies. And we've talked about the example back in Russia, in the Soviet Union. If you were a farmer, the government owned the land, the government owned the cows. They were the government's cows, the government milk. And you had it didn't matter if you got the herd to produce 300 gallons a week or 500 gallons a week, you got none of the excess. You only got your allotment. So there was no innovation, no effort for you to work harder, work smarter, because you got the same ration of milk because they weren't your cows and it wasn't your land. So he's absolutely right. Socialism destroys innovation. All right. Let's see, how much time we got left?
We got 11 minutes.
Okay. All right. So let's go to another clip of Milton Friedman explaining why price controls as a cure for inflation have always failed. Now, I'm going to cut out the first 2 or 3 minutes of this is a recap of when Nixon implemented price controls before you were born in 1971 and then the UK. So here's Milton Friedman, again, a Nobel Award winner, explaining why price controls always fail. Here we go.
And the whole problem is made far worse by the false cures which government adopts, particularly wage and price controls. Wage and price controls, far from being a cure for inflation, only make inflation worse.
It is a device that governments have repeatedly resorted to try to cover up the effects of their own policies. It is offered as a cure for inflation. It is not a cure for inflation. It has never been a cure for inflation. It is an alleged cure that is far worse than the disease. because its effect is to repress the symptoms, to repress the consequences of the more basic force. I always say that if you want to analyze wage and price control, the simplest analogy that brings it home is to think of a kettle on your stove in which there's water and the water is boiling. It's got a cover on it, and the boiling water is threatening to throw the cover off. Now, obvious, sensible thing to do is to turn down the heat under the kettle. Another thing you can do is to take a brick and put it on top of the kettle, and at the same time turn up the heat. That is precisely what President.
And of course, the heat in this case is adding more money to the money supply, right?
Mhm.
So let me just back that up a little bit.
Now, obvious, sensible thing to do is to turn down the heat under the kettle.
Spend less.
Another thing you can do is to take a brick and put it on top of the kettle, and at the same time turn up the heat. That is precisely what President Nixon did in 1971 when he simultaneously put a brick on top of the kettle by freezing prices and wages, and at the same time launched on a more expansive monetary and fiscal policy, which turned up the heat under the kettle. And what happened? The lid of the kettle blew up. You held it down for a little while, and then you had a 12%, 13% inflation. That has been the experience every time, not simply over the last 20, 30 years, but for 2,000 years. Emperor Diocletian tried the same thing in Rome 2,000 years ago with identically the same results. So I have nothing but a negative opinion about wage and price controls.
You would think we could learn from others rather than have to repeat mistakes.
Apparently, nobody can learn from history. The government is too big. It's too intrusive. It restricts what we can do. It's becoming our master instead of our servant, and we've got to react against it and cut it down to size.
So what do you think of Milton Friedman's analogy of price controls as a cure for inflation?
And again, he always has these interesting twists on things.
Well, I just love the guy. I think he's spot on, and I think he deserved his Nobel Prize. By the way, if anybody's interested, just Google Milton Friedman, and he's got a bunch of clips, on inflation, on price controls, on wealth. Just Google Milton Friedman on YouTube. You'll find he and Thomas Sowell are two of my favorites. All right, you want to move on to taxpayer relief shots?
Yeah.
All right. So why do we call them taxpayer relief shots? You tell me, why do we call them taxpayer relief shots?
Saving the taxpayers money for the cost of a jury trial and housing the criminals after they're convicted of their crimes.
Yep. At $80,000 a year. And here's how the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida explains it.
If somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
And then I think we've got your favorite, or our favorite sheriff, Grady Judd. Let's see what we have here. Here's one.
I would highly suggest that if a looter breaks into your home, comes into your home while you're there to steal stuff, that you take your gun and you shoot him. You shoot him so that he looks like grated cheese.
And last but not least.
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
And that's why you shouldn't break into people's houses in Polk County, Florida. By the way, the funniest thing I heard all week, there's always been this big debate about, what's the best caliber to carry? Should you have a 9mm? Should you have a 38? Should you have a 357? And you know what a 45 is, right?
Pretty big round.
Pretty big, right? For 50 years, it was the official caliber of the United States Army. And so the question, I saw this on a t-shirt, why carry a 45 question mark? And the answer was, because it's just stupid having to shoot twice. I thought that was just a great quote. All right.
And I love the quote last week from Sheriff Grady Judd of Polk County too, about the series of break-ins. I had posted that quote to our website last week.
Yeah, about the Venezuelan gangs. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. This comes us from Houston, and I said that a little confusing. The 20-year-old son and his mother are out somewhere else. They're both in separate cars. While they're out, the husband and the son's two daughters are home, and three armed thugs break into the home, pistol whip the father. The son's two sisters are hiding in a closet. So it's a hectic scene, and the young son, well, I say young, he's 20 years old, but he comes in and saves the day. Here we go.
Start to the day for one family ends with one person dead. That person, a home invasion suspect. And the police say the son is the one who opened fire, saving his family. This happened on Quail Meadow and Braes Ridge in Southwest Houston. Channel 2's Vincent Caprelli has been following the details on this one all morning long, and he joins us live. Vincent, terrifying moments for this family.
Good morning. That's right. This is a very disturbing story. 3 men attacked a father. His two daughters hid for their lives. The aftermath, one man is dead, and a neighborhood is on edge.
Pow, pow, pow.
An anonymous neighbor recalls the shots fired around midnight.
I said to my wife, we better get down on it.
That commotion, a home invasion that escalated with gunfire and ends with one man dead in this middle-class neighborhood. Police say 3 men en masse pistol whipped a father when he arrived home last night. They forced their way inside and ransacked the house. Luis Hernandez, father of two, lives 2 doors down.
I'm pretty concerned because that doesn't really happen around here.
But it gets even worse. The father's 2 daughters were hiding in a closet, scared for their lives, pushing a panic button. But the crooks discovered their hiding place as the father's wife and son came home in separate cars. The 20-year-old son noticed something was very wrong. He went inside the home and grabbed his pistol and shot one of the suspects in the head, killing them.
The guy could have killed his family, so I don't think he did the wrong thing.
The other 2 suspects ran from the home and jumped.
Wait, the other 2 suspects, his buddies ran and left him there? That's
shocking.
Never happened. That's
Shocking.
never happened before, hasn't it?
The other thing is, when are people going to learn? You don't mess with Texas.
Yeah. Let's back this up and keep going here.
He could have killed his family, I don't think he did the wrong thing.
The other 2 suspects ran from the home and jumped on the hood of the mother's car, who was with another child. The shocked and distressed mother ripped her car into reverse, sending the suspects flying. However, the 2 suspects did get away, stealing the father's minivan.
I think all of us in this neighborhood will, be careful, to keep our doors locked and, to be extra cautious. I guess we'd say they better not come back.
And right now, police are searching inside the home for clues. The family is shaken but expected to be okay. Meanwhile, police are still searching for those last 2 suspects. If you have any information, please reach out to police. Reporting live in Southwest Houston, Vincent Crivelli, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
And as we've discussed before, if they find those other 2, they can both be charged with homicide because one of their buddies was killed during the commission of a felony.
And again, Houston, Texas, don't mess with Texas.
Don't mess with Texas. How many of these, we have a disproportionate number of these from Texas because I think Texas has one of the highest gun ownership rates. By the way, particularly if the guy's driving a pickup, I spent a lot of time in Texas on business. I've yet to be in, and I've been in dozens of pickup trucks. I've yet to be in a pickup truck in Texas where the driver didn't have at least one gun.
Yeah.
So, and I make it a point, by the way, I'm, hey Bob, what kind of gun you carrying? And he was like, well, I got a 9mm here and I got a 45 over here. I mean, I've literally, and this is the truth, I've literally never been in a pickup truck in Texas where the driver didn't have at least one gun. All right. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, we got one final day of summer tomorrow, I think, with soaring temperatures into the 90s, but looking forward to fall.
You and me both. Can't wait. Fall's my favorite time of year. Anyway, I want to thank everybody who took the time to listen to this podcast and for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about the things I find of interest and importance. And I hope you found them as interesting and important as I did. If so, I hope you continue to listen in the weeks and months to come. You want to see some materials and clips and story links you heard us talk about today? In a day or two, you'll be able to find them on the Jerzee Joe website at jerzeejoe.com. That's JERZEE JerzzeeJoe.com.
Yep.
And if you want to email me with a comment, question, or suggested show topic, you can do that just by sending me an email to joe@JerzzeeJoe.com. Just remember Jerzee, RZEE. Other than that, Producer Susan, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Enjoy the holiday weekend.
You too, and I'll talk to you next week. You take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.